But if you really want to understand why, the deeper whys that are driving their behavior, then you need to talk to them. And it can be through in-depth interviews like this one. You can also do surveys as well. But I highly recommend the interviews because there's just really unique insight that you get through an interview you won't get through a survey. And it gives you a lot of empathy for your customer, which is so important. And so the interview method that you just saw, this is being done by some of the world's biggest brands. It's being done by Intercom, Eventbrite, IKEA, Amazon, McDonald's. They're using this customer buying journey interview to really understand their customers. Actually, Intercom, when they first got started, before they became the billion-dollar publicly traded company that they are today, they had built out a product and they were doing okay with their sales of that product. They were getting some users, but they really wanted to understand the jobs that their customers were buying them to do. And so they hired Bob Molesta, who's one of the thought leaders behind Jobs to Be Done. He went off and did a bunch of these interviews with their customers. And what they learned, which was really interesting, was they had one product. It was this kind of like on-site chat app. You've probably chatted with people through Intercom before on different websites. But people were using it for 4 different jobs, 4 very specific different jobs. And so what they ended up doing is actually taking that underlying technology and using it to create these 4 different specialized products. And in making that decision, they went from like, I think that at the time their sales was like 100,000 a year or something to 50 million a year within a very short time frame. And it's because they really built out a product specifically for each of those jobs rather than having one product that did all 4 not as great. And they got all of that insight from doing the interviews that you folks just saw. So here's the deal. A lot of teams are not doing interviews. They're making excuses. They're choosing not to find the time. They're, putting out fires as opposed to talking to customers. And this is pretty common. ProfitWell did a huge study and found that 70% of teams admitted that they were talking to fewer than 10 customers a month to learn from them. They were doing sales calls perhaps, but they weren't talking to customers to learn from them. They were saying things like customer interviews take too much time, and they weren't making time for them. But guess what was happening to the teams that were making time for them? They actually were growing 2 to 3 times faster than the other 70%. So again, this is the causal thing. It's like, what's the difference between these companies and the companies who are doing interviews? Well, the companies that are doing interviews are growing way, way faster.